now rocking with the hostess with the mostest. This is your girl, the natural hair gamer, former and current, present will always be Janae Benet. And welcome to another episode of Gaming for the Culture, where we talk to people in the gaming industry. It is not necessarily about the gaming industry. Like, you have so many outlets currently, I know they're diminishing, but you have so many outlets to read about the surface of the gaming industry. We talk to the people who make the gaming industry what it is and who make it possible and who have made these contributions that people may or may not have heard about. And with that, I am happy to let our guests introduce themselves.
Wow. Hi, everyone. My name is Akil Fletcher. I'm a postdoctoral fellow and lecturer in the anthropology department here at Princeton University. I teach courses on, well, one of them is called Gaming Blackness, specifically engaging with race and how it shows up within the narrative and use of video games. I also teach digital anthropology and overall just research how individuals use tech to form communities, identities, and build out this wonderful world that we're living in, but online.
That is amazing. I know a lot of places are coming to the terms of having like a video game course, right?
Yeah.
And then you have this course that's introducing Blackness as well. And I've never heard of that. I've
Same.
never heard of that. I know there are other schools, trying to get like hip hop courses, like authentic hip hop courses as well.
Mhm.
And so it's very nice to see that education is growing as we need it to grow. It should probably grow a little bit faster, but it's getting somewhere.
Yeah, it is. And, unfortunately, there are still certain stigmas or stereotypes around gaming that are still a little prevalent. I would say the Academy has gotten a million times better with it than, you know, 20 years ago, or even when like Dr. Kishonna Gray was starting to research and other things like that. She definitely had a much harder uphill battle climbing to sort of legitimize work and research on games than I did. Thankfully, she had very much paved the way, and I could be like, hey, I want to do this thing. And I also went to a broad and weird enough department at UCI who already had folks who studied games, and they were like, yeah, just do whatever you want as long as it is feasible within anthropological and ethnographic methodology. So it was doable.
So, with you being in a weird enough department and asking their permission, is that also how you got to take your students to like across the world?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to actually. So the first trip is coming up in the fall. I thankfully got a couple of grants um, within Princeton to take students to Tokyo for the second time that I'm teaching gaming blackness, and that's going to function as an experiential sort of engagement for the students to engage with blackness globally and to understand what the Japanese gaming market is essentially doing, or rather not so much even the market but the gaming culture, right? I want them to interact with with people who are playing the games in the arcades, move around. Just drop my pen and I'll get that in a second, but um yeah, no, Princeton is thankfully has been incredibly supportive over my first year here. Finding funding was a task, but it was much easier than it has been in other places. And that being said, we got brand new laptops. Princeton is amazing, but they have little to no gaming infrastructure. So, first time I taught the class, we were playing on PC boot ups through Mac systems, and nobody wants to do that. Now we have dedicated gaming laptops for the class. We have money for the funding, and then we'll be heading out to Tokyo in October, and I'm super excited for that. So, yeah.
That's amazing. How does one engage with blackness in gaming in a place like Tokyo during this um, Assassin's Creed Shadows debate and discourse that's going
Yeah,
on?
that's definitely going to be a thing that's going to pop up in this semester's class as something, as I'm writing up something currently with a fantastic professor who studies Black experiences in Japan by the name of Kimberly Hassel, who's over at the University of Arizona currently, and it is very interesting. One, it's largely just engaging with the historical presence of Japanese culture itself and with the gaming culture directly, and then finding where Blackness sort of shows itself. So obviously Yasuke being a black samurai, there's no debate about that. You know, all the experts say it, blah blah blah. Just in case anybody wants to go like he wasn't actually a samurai sort of thing. Yasuke is obviously a great example of early experiences of blackness within Japan, and Yasuke has become a very beloved sort of historical figure and individual to write stories about. Hence the inclusion into Assassin's Creed, because super dual, so like the average samurai, what was it, is like was like 5'5", 5'6", and Yasuke was a smooth like 6 foot something, so huge in comparison. Myself being 6'3" can attest to that, but there is opportunities to engage with Yasuke, to engage with black art within Japanese culture, to engage with the hip hop scene, right? Something that has been huge because as American culture has been transported to Japan, it has also meant that while there have been racist things like minstrelsy and other things like that, and weird images of black individuals that sort of proliferated within anime imagery and other things like that. There's also been a huge focus on like street fashion and hip hop that are just direct expressions of black culture that has been molded within this American cool that has been shipped out to Japan, and it's a lot of that we'll be talking about engaging with. And I'm also just gonna buy them a bunch of we'll give them a bunch of yen and have them run around in arcades and try to struggle to play video games that does not that only reads in kanji and they can't do anything. I had to do it. It was fun.
Well, what's the point of being the teacher unless you're going to be like the main person teaching about everything on a trip where they probably have a million and one questions, so you need to have a million and two answers.
Yeah, though I
We
do hope
were
they learn. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I think they definitely will learn and have learned because like that's such a big experience. It's a core memory, right? Like it's a core memory and it's not everybody's canon event. Hopefully it'll start being more and more people's canon event, but as a core memory, I feel like you remember everything. Like
Yeah,
my first time traveling around Europe was like wild. And so you really don't realize how much information you take in
yeah,
until you start talking about the situation or until somebody says something to you and you're like, "Oh, did you know?" And my favorite part about you taking these students to another country, especially a country where people can get this, excuse the word I'm about to use, but Japanophile mentality or this
hmm,
obsession with Japan that they can do no wrong, that they are like the greatest thing ever, people still rocking like the imperial like sun, like, and
yeah,
not really knowing the history behind that and just being like because we're okay with weebs, right? We have no problem. Like, I think I'm a weeb, but I'm not going to idolize another country. And so, within doing so and bringing these kids to, they're probably like some type of adults, but they're definitely younger than me. So, bringing these kids to a place where they could see like the good, the bad, right? And
yeah,
have different experiences, I think is going to reflect in their circles, right? Because so many people are like Japan apologists and have never like lived there or experienced it, right? Like some of the not so much like talked about or widely talked about issues of like Japanese people like using the n word or they
hmm,
are trying to do it. It may not be exactly like blackface, but they're doing things that are very black coded and then kind of just like sweeping things under the rug of like, oh, well, like everybody can like enjoy this. And so I just like the idea of being able to expose them to everything and so that they can give a more accurate representation of like what's going on, and then we can still have those like hard cultural conversations.
yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, everything that you said it's all a big point. Of course, Japanese imperialism was incredibly brutal, even in comparison to others at its time, um, and that's something that kind of gets glossed over as they have very much become the country that is associated with cute cartoons and anime and all these other things that goes on there. And there is definitely a fetishization of Japan that is sweeping. It is just so particular within like culture right now. And it's also just fascinating because it's not necessarily something that is racially divided. It seems like the Black communities, white communities, Latinx communities, Asian communities all are all taking in some level of love or appreciation for Japan that is starting to step into the form of fetishization, especially since they are attempting to recreate portions of culture that they don't fully at times understand. If you want to learn about a culture and engage with it healthfully, I think that's perfectly okay, as long as it doesn't go into the side of fetishization or appropriation. You're perfectly fine. Um, However, yeah, there's definitely there's problematic things, right? Anti-blackness is global. There definitely exists in Japan, and the excuse that people often give is that Japan is sort of isolationist country, or rather homogenous country with no black people in it, so like they don't know any better. And I think that is insulting to the country and the people. There's plenty of black people in Japan. There's plenty of foreigners into Japan since like the 1600s plus, right? It's not just Japanese individuals. Once post World War II, once the U.S. occupied uh, post 1945, right, there were tons of black soldiers that were positioned or stationed rather within Japan that led to a bunch of intermingling within culture and the stereotypical like bunch of mixed race babies and all these other things, right? But that being said, yeah, them using the N word, them using the other things is a very interesting topic because I feel like for Black people, specifically within like Black and Asian solidarity, it's been a very weird sort of expression because there's been lots of opportunities and moments where Black and Asian people have had solidarity post like Chinese Exclusion Act and all these other things, right? Where Black individuals stood up for Chinese individuals and vice versa, as they were both, being oppressed at that point. But there came a turn where uh, Asian identity, right, became the sort of model minority and was then weaponized against the idea of blackness of like, hey, if they came here and they can make it, you can too, ignoring the fact that outside of like Chinese and Japanese immigrants who were given lots of or rather were like only the richest of the rich were able to come in during the time of the Exclusion Act. It allowed for lots of individuals to build wealth and strength in a way that black individuals had not, and ignoring the fact that there were Vietnamese, Filipino, other folks who were struggling just as much as Black individuals, but didn't get acknowledged within that model minority aspect, and sort of created a fraying within the Asian communities in and of itself. But all that being said, because there's been solidarity specifically against whiteness, there are moments where folks have will argue that non-black people of color can say the n-word because they aren't white, and that is a concept of debate I don't get into. I prefer if they don't, but lots of my friends or even other people will be like, hey man, I'm good with non-black identifying people saying the word as long as they're not white, and that's also troublesome in and of itself. But it's very interesting to see that like solidarity between Japanese or any sort of like Asian community rather, within the US, whether it be like post black exploitation or even anything else like that, has sort of given them or given some people leeway into doing it. In the country itself is very different, but we can get into that another time, I think. But yeah.
Wow. I felt like you covered stuff, even if it wasn't in depth. It was definitely from the Rudy to the Tootie. You
Sorry.
definitely no. That was great. Because I think it is important to recognize that Japan isn't just this Kauai island in the middle of nowhere that's never had technology. Like I saw Aretha Franklin performing there, and so while people would try to protect them, like saying the N word or being like, they don't know better. They just think it's cool. It's like, but they have been experiencing Black people, just as you said, for a very long time, and not just solely celebrities, but like in the community. So
Yeah.
I do like how you broke that down because it's important to like go through it thoroughly for the people who want to learn, right? And so,
Yeah.
like, hopefully, when people hear this, they're kind of like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I just like no one should be absolved of their like rougher part of history because I feel like that's how we don't learn. And we need
Yeah.
to like talk about it, go through it, feel those feelings, come up with
Yeah.
a better solution, and create remembrance around it so we don't repeat it.
Very true. And in the event to qualify my statements and obviously put out there that like while I have major interest in Japanese media as it interacts with Black communities, I am less so versed within the histories of the country itself. I will just throw out there that state making in and of itself is a violent act, right? So every country has a sort of like brutal history. So Japan isn't unique in that case, but they are unique in the way in which like people, as you said, kawaiify it. It's a whole it's a whole different sort of in engagement in a lot of those cases, and it's just one that's very recent and one that's fascinating because there's a lot of Japanese and Black interaction going on. I mean, Meg Thee Stallion is doing a bunch of stuff and was just there with. Ooh, I forgot the name of the band, but the one who sings "Tokyo Calling," which is a great song, but is it's there it's everywhere, right? It's not just they don't know any better. So it's definitely there.
Wow, how do we transition from that topic? Because I definitely want to talk about it more, but I feel like we need like a special episode for just that in particular, especially because you're so knowledgeable. And I feel like I have so many questions. And so we got to give people time to ask their questions and then circle back to this. I definitely want to talk about something interesting that you said earlier while we were talking about like satire of television and how, it's always going to be lost on some people
Yeah,
and how like it's just that's just how it is or satire of anything. And then you said that GTA is a parody, and I was taken aback by that, and I'm just going to explain my brief history of like GTA. So,
yeah.
I never played it when I was younger. I definitely always thought it was violent. Don't get me wrong, I play things like Assassin's Creed and I've played like Gears and things like that. And so like those have like a form of violence as well.
Hmm.
But GTA kind of just seemed like it was fun and it was just too much for me. I'm a sensitive kid, okay? And so, when I started kind of like having my feelings around GTA after a certain point of like, hey, I feel like this is making fun of Black people because, you found out like who made it and the person who made it is not a Black person. And, they kind of just decided to create this thing about this Black guy living in this place being, all of like the negative stereotypes. And I would stand on my soapbox anytime somebody would talk about GTA because I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to voice my opinion.
Mhm.
And then somebody was like, "Yeah, but like GTA is my like life.
Mhm.
Like I've lived this." And I was like, I've never thought of it like that before. And if this is something that you identify with, like I think that's cool too and that you should play it, but once again, who made it?
Mhm.
And what was his inspiration? Because then to go off on just a very small tangent, to have someone who is non-black make a game like this with all of like the black stereotypes everyone thinks about, um, is the same as someone being like, I understand the plight of Black people because I grew up in a Black neighborhood, but I'm not Black. And it's like, no, that's not fully the case. I think, that's a great builder of like allyship, but that's
Mhm.
not a basis of like understanding. Like, you don't get to speak for Black people. In
Mhm.
this case, you can speak with them. So, um, that is my background with GTA, and then you said it's a parody, and I've never thought of it like that. So, like, walk me through that.
Yeah, so GTA is a fascinating game, right? And it's one that we work with in class. It's a sort of breakdown because obviously we work on San Andreas and we can talk about the others. I have a little less experience with five, but either way. Um, and you're right, and everything you said isn't necessarily wrong, right? And I guess to begin with, right? Like GTA is originally developed by Rockstar, which is a studio that's put together by basically two British guys who had a big love of like hip hop and rock music and basically counterculture all together. And it started off as a music industry and eventually got like a little games division. And long story short, they put together a bunch of stuff and they made, I forgot, it was like called Crash and Burn or whatever. They basically made like a little top down like car game that you ran around and started like killing people. And because of a glitch where the car kept chasing you, they made that like into the identity of the game. And that eventually evolved until you got like to the Grand Theft Auto series, where obviously the idea of the game is to be crazy, violent, do missions while getting chased down by the police. Fast forward, you get to San Andreas, right? And being what the third or the fourth, I believe it's the third installment in the Grand Theft Auto series. It might have been the fourth actually, because Vice City thing, whatever. It took a very different approach into the game, where it was one where Rockstar did a crap ton of research on LA to put together the environment, the storyline, and what was happening in that case, right? So CJ, all these other folks, right? It's interesting, or rather engaged, because the reason why I call it parody, or rather parodic in nature, is because it lambasts, or sort of creates a superficial like black identity that you would see like in like a hip hop video or these other things like that. And to get that, or rather to be authentic to that, they worked with lots of different black folks to create it, right? Samuel L. Jackson voices the main villain. You have a bunch of different rappers that engage with it, and a lot of different black folks that were like putting their seal of approval, and they were engaging with. So it wasn't just like they made the game about the culture, they worked with the culture to make it happen, and then to make this like fun experience where it is what it is. The vibe, but that being said, there are still obviously problems with Grand Theft Auto, as it basically covers all of the same issues that any sort of like U.S. interpreted game is, especially one made by white folks are going to create, where it has like hyper violence against black bodies, specifically black women. It dehumanizes in some aspects, but in other aspects where you pointed out, where like folks were like, that's my experience. When I teach it in class, it's usually a 50-50 split, right? Like I had other students who were like, this is the closest thing that I've gotten to my reality in a video game, even if it's just meant to be a joke in many of these cases. And there are moments in San Andreas that are authentic, like CJ's need not to want to basically his refusal of using drugs, the issue of engaging with the drug epidemic that's going on within his own community, and then the references to the 1992 LA riots that happened within the end of the game, where they're engaged with stopping riots or blah blah blah, whatever happens there. And for me, this is where the game shows some of its major failings, and how it doesn't necessarily escape that sort of like white liberal ideologies, simply because their solution to fixing the quote unquote riots or uprisings at the end is like, we can't destroy our own community, blah blah blah. This is wrong. No matter what, violence is never the answer, right? It gives you that very like that like the police are corrupt and bad, which is these are moments where like Rockstar is doing things that no other company are doing, right? They have a strong engagement and interpret an analysis of like police corruption, police violence, brutality, drug use, life that of what creates poverty, rather than like blaming black folks. They point to all the sort of the structural issues that create the life that you're playing through in this case, which then turns into like bazookas jumping off of trains and blah 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 blah. That's where the parody comes in. Yeah, but even then, at the end of it, they basically go like, any sort of uprising is bad, and they're not doing that, and you have to quell it yourself, and then you kill the police officer and blah 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 blah. But it's parody in the nature of, they create this over the top black life while questioning the status quo, providing something that like back in 2003 wasn't necessarily happening, um, while taking interpretation and research from black culture in and of itself. The problem comes in when people play it and then they go, this is like real black life, right? I'm a gangster. We're doing this, like this is like word up to your mom, whatever the hell folks were saying. Like they took that shit seriously. Like black life is nothing but violence and drugs and all those other things, and missed all of the engagements and lessons that Rockstar did a pretty decent job of engaging with, until they shot the bed all the way at the end, which tends to be the case with a lot of these games. Bioshock Infinite, I'm looking at you. We're gonna get into that another time.
Okay, no, but we have to get into that because I've never played Bioshock. because it was kind of too like gross for me.
Yeah.
So like tell me about it, because sometimes you can't like learn about a game without being removed from it, except for like cases right now where I can ask you where you don't have to show me visuals, which is the whole reason why I couldn't play it in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, before I get to Bioshock, I guess, is there anything else you want to follow up on Grand Theft Auto, or I'm happy to just jump in with
Yeah, no, I
okay.
think that really answers the question, and I think that was a really good answer because it very much so brings it full circle. Oh, I was going to ask,
Yeah.
not to ask you to speak for all white people, especially not being one.
I I would never dream of it. Not like my voice has ever been taken.
So what is it that you think when they're recreating these stories, when they're telling these stories, even when are nonfiction, that they have to create this moment where they're like, you said it best, where you're like, this white like liberal thinking of like, hey, let's not destroy our community. But we've seen that, right?
Mhm.
We've seen that in the past couple of years actually work in the favor to be like, yeah, like mess up the target and see what happens. Like show these people that you need a certain type of support, and them just being there like taking your money is not enough. And so, oftentimes when I watch certain movies that could be true, there's always like that one good white person, right? Like where they
Yeah.
have the black person who is going through something, who technically looks like the villain because this white person has to like come and help them, right?
Yeah.
So they're going through this thing, they're trying to like figure this out. They're just like living their regular old lives, and they got called into a bunch of mess, and then at the end they can't do it without like this white person. Like what, why
Yeah.
do you think that is? Why do you think they need to be like, that needs to be the solution? Perfect example, which I had a hard time watching, is Lovecraft Country,
Yeah.
right? Like there
Mhm.
was this, spoiler alert, I will give you guys, like I'll try to only say this within the 10
That show's like
seconds
6 years old. Go for
So,
it. I
wow, wow, I didn't realize that. So there's a part where they're talking about Emmett Till, right? The
mhm.
Chicagoan who went to Mississippi and then was like brutally murdered, drowned, like drugged through like the street, everything like that. Um, she didn't understand why it was such like a big deal until she did it to herself, because like she couldn't die or something. So then she took it upon herself to like like throw herself into a lake being tied, like, and then she was like, oh my gosh, I get it. And it's like, why you just can't understand that we telling you, and instead of, you need to like be in that situation, like it needs to be this personal experience. So that's kind of two questions in one, but I feel like
Yeah.
it's the same ideology.
No, I think, I mean, wonderful questions overall, right? And I think it's for the same reasons why like Barrett and Saz and Final Fantasy have daughters, or right, like why they're always giving like adult black characters like children or something to protect, or like a dog or something, right, to soften their experience, because black humanity is often illegible, right, to a larger white audience. And this doesn't mean that like white folks can't enjoy black stories or black media, but just from like reading the reviews and the reports of black media, often there's a lot of folks who's just like, I don't get it. Why are they complaining? What is this? XYZ, blah, 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 blah. So people often have to like bend over backwards to make black humanity legible to the experience. And I think Lovecraft Country did a terrible job with it in this way. In some ways, it literally takes that much before like a white woman gets up and says like, "Yeah, I totally get it. This is it," right? But realistically, it doesn't do. It doesn't. It's one of the worst ways to portray that, especially because it reenacts the violence that was done upon Emmett, just for another person to be like, "Hey, I get it now," right? Um, so it was a big shock, low payoff in my opinion, and I think you're right to question that. Lovecraft Country had a bunch of problems, and not only from that, but in terms of its engagement with its queer characters, the murder of the queer indigenous individual, all these other things where it's just like, yeah, sometimes even black people in the writing room like mess up, and those were good examples. I do think it had like one of the best horror episodes with the Lopsy, like mention like
Please,
that. That episode put me to think. But
let's not go back there at
yeah,
all.
exactly. But overall, right? It's what was I going to say there? Overall, there's a need to make blackness legible, right? And that's largely it. And the need to make it legible often like goes back to like that engagement of like fetishization and engagement with it, where like people will often cross the line from like a healthy love and respect of hip hop to like wanting to consume the black body and like in this art form and this other things. And Grand Theft Auto definitely steps into that territory a little bit, where it's like we want to make this as like a love letter to hip hop culture and to music that we love, but there are moments where they couldn't help themselves but from implanting larger white ideology or liberal ideology into. And when I say liberal, I don't mean like conservative liberal. I mean like I don't even that's 100% mean liberalism in this case, but I mean like this constant need to maintain or to adhere to the status quo, right? To like make everything feel normal and to only try to change things in the sense that normalcy can be maintained, right? It's the same thing around like defunding the police or like abolishing. They're like we only know a world where the police exist. So thus the answer could never be to abolish and to move past that system or to abolish prisons and Angela Davis and all this stuff, right? But rather to just make them better so that we can keep having our defense force that makes all of us feel safe. Meanwhile, every black and brown person is telling you like that's not like we don't need we like there are other ways to keep a community safe rather than policing, right? And I'm not even going to dive into all of that, but yeah, that I think yeah is a lot and so much stuff to talk about there. And whatever you're happy to jump to Bioshock, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let's do that now because you are preaching for sure. Like class is in session. Like
Oh,
take
thank you.
notes.
Hilarious.
So yeah, no, we can definitely hop over to Bioshock because it's so much deeper, right? Like I'm never asking you to conceptualize the white mind, and I'm never
Yeah,
asking you to like, make a decision and make a statement for like a group of people who need to do that. It's a very like exhausting trope to go through where you're
yeah,
like, I think they also need to have that happy ending with that without that black person being helped by like a white person or without that black person being like, oh, I'm like squishy now, like
yeah,
I'm soft, I'm this is a like hard thing to write because they're like, well, why don't they just have such and such help them? Or why wouldn't they just fight for a cause like bigger than themselves that they're willing to sacrifice for? And I feel like this goes beyond as a woman who watches who's just now getting to like this era of watching all these really like romance movies. I'm
hmm
kind of sick of love in movies if it's not specifically a romance because like what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Like, why do you? So, like, now that you love this person, you're just stupid. You don't have any sense anymore. The plan went out the window because this person looked like they were in danger and you just foregoed everything when they would have been fine. It to me, it bleeds over into that as well.
yeah,
Like, if it's gonna be cheesy, let's make it cheesy. If it's gonna be romance, let's make it romance. But like you having this action movie, you guys are kissing when the bomb's going off. I'm gonna cut it off. I'm gonna cut it off. I don't care what else happens because like you're not even doing the characters justice, right? And I know that
yeah,
there are some movies like that, but like I said, if you're gonna make it cheesy, make it cheesy. But yeah, let's get into Bioshock. Let's just
yeah.
jump right over into Bioshock. Tell me about Bioshock Infinite specifically.
Yeah, no, no, no. So Bioshock is an interesting series where basically somebody tries to make a utopia and it all goes wrong, right? That's usually the thing. In the first game, it was an undersea utopia called Rapture, and that is like more of a horror game and definitely more of the bloody extent. Where I had a rough time playing that one, especially as younger, because I'm a coward and horror games will like I could watch horror movies no easy, but for some reason, like playing through horror games, it sets me up different.
You're
I don't know
not
what
a
it is.
coward. It's just that's not our steez. Like, cause I can't do that either. Like when I tell you I struggled with love, like every week. It took me a week to get over the next episode. And then
Yeah.
eventually I stopped watching after the Hippolyta episode, which I'm glad I got to watch that one
Mhm.
because that really inspired a lot of like Afrofuturism and stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't think you're a
It
coward. I
was
think we're
it.
just built different.
It's perfectly fine. It's like I said, watching isn't an issue. Playing, I'm getting better though. It revolves me swearing and yelling at my screen as I survive and move around. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Infinite is the third game, and it is a fascinating game, and I plan to teach it this quarter. In terms of this time, the utopia isn't under the water; it's in the sky, and it is specifically a white religious ethno state, right? Like they build a white Christian city in the sky and then make all of the black and brown people the laborers. So it is legitimately just supposed to be the dream utopia for a white racist. And it for I don't remember the game came out like 2011 or 2013, like a game that came out like in those years to make that critique and not receive the backlash that like Yasuke is getting is fascinating to me just in and of itself, right? People were upset. There was a little bit of things, but overall, people were just like, political game. Let's play through it, right? So there definitely is a difference in terms of like in terms of people's like media literacy and racial tolerance that is changing. But um, and it's so fascinating because you play as an ex Pinkerton agent, and the Pinkertons were sort of like surveillance slash uh, violent security group that were often uh, brought on to like quell um, what am I looking for? Labor uprisings, right? So if you were striking, other things like that, the Pinkertons could come in and have killed and will do stuff and all these other things, right? When it was a little bit more acceptable to like stomp out the people who are asking for more money than it is today, right? And you take this not so great person who needs to pay off their debt, and his job is to go find a girl and capture her, and then you run into this utopia. Immediately you are baptized. They say a bunch of like Christian words, blah 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 blah, read a couple Bible verses, dunk you under the water, and then you like end up in this place where you are now looking for a girl. And then you see absolutely nobody else but white people. And then they have a couple of like Sambo-esque figures and a couple of things that like you can play like water shoot and other stuff like that. And you're just and at first you might mistake it for like just a piece of the time. You're like, okay, nothing weird's happening. Um, unless you're me. And I was like, yeah, that's sus. Until you get to like this convention center, and they're like, all right, well, you won the prize. You get to, if you hit them with a ball, you win. And then when you see it's them, they've brought out a mixed race couple, a black woman and a white man, and you're like, you have like hit them with the ball. Um, Basically they're just like, they are n-word lovers, this ain't right, this isn't natural, blah 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 blah. You hit him with a ball, you win the prize. And it was basically like a public stoning in some cases, and you are given the option to throw it at the couple or the announcer who was trying to get you to thing it. And the game never eventually like gives you that choice, which I'm kind of glad they don't, because I would hate to see how many people would actually hit the couple. Um and in that and but in that case, it was like the first time, it was just like a brutal realization of like what the game is doing and how it's going on with race and everything else like that. And it had some interesting takes and everything else like that. And eventually you go through an uprising. It's essentially a slave rebellion, right? The whole game plays through a slave rebellion until you get to the end. And the head slave, who was framed for the death of like the religious leader's wife, actually they turn around and say she's just as bad as the religious leader for fighting for her freedom from slavery than the guy who was enslaving. And I was just like, you dropped the entire like the entire ball. I don't know if I can curse. I'm sorry, I was about to, but I was like, they dropped the entire ball on that, right? And
Yeah, that's really
it's
wild for you to
it's
go
rough, yeah.
from one extreme to something that's like benefiting, right? Because
Yes.
slavery, and no matter what color you are, you shouldn't have to be subjected to it. I feel like we can agree with that, right? Until it's like, oh, they're black, and it's like, oh, but they're supposed to. So that's very wild that they were like, it's the same thing. Like wanting to be free is the same thing as like
Yeah.
a cult.
They were just like, violence is wrong. And here again, the liberal ideology like is pervasive within these games that are attempting to be shocking and like deep in their critique. and they always fall back on the status quo. And I'm like, you were almost there. I was
So
like,
close.
it was just like,
You're
hey, I'm like,
so close.
if I like, am I enthused about playing as the white savior that is here to help the Black, Asian, Latino, and Indigenous people escape from this white utopia? No, but ending any form of like class and race based slavery is better than not ending it. And then in the end,
Yeah.
you just like kill everybody. I'm like, this was not the plan, guys. Like this went completely awry.
Wow. They were doing so good by like not letting you choose who to stone because they knew what people were doing. And I appreciate video games as a way to play as someone else and to learn something.
Yeah.
A lot of the times before like other stories were being told, I was sick of being a white character and I was sick of like like saving everyone through violence. I think that's
Hmm.
also why cozy games are a bit more popular right now because you're not exactly doing this like hardcore like aggro like gaming. It's just like cats are making soup, not that I really like that. I'm not a fan of the cats making a soup or the cats are running a hotel or the cats are like hurting other cats. Like I don't know, hurt like hurting as in like sheep hurting, not like hurting, by the way.
Yeah.
you know
Whoa, whoa, slow down, Janae. We almost don't have time to tell the people about the sponsor today, which is the Pink On the Seat Gaming Chair review that is posted up on my channel. I reviewed this chair over like a year ago, probably about three, all right? And honestly, it was one of my favorite chairs with the pink color pop and it being 25% bigger than the Jungle On the Seat Gaming Chair. If you don't know what these are, after the episode, go to the link in the description to check out the review. Not only is there a video review, there's also a written review on Tom's Hardware. All right, Janae, back to you.
so to make that distinction
It's okay.
because
It's fun to hurt sheep.
yeah. So I think that's why cozy games have become a bit more popular. And I think that is okay. And I also think the people are asking for something new. But then when they get it, they're unsure about how they feel about it being like a Black person because in some of their minds, they're like, well, why couldn't a white person go through this struggle? And it's like, because you don't go through the struggle. So, like, you'd get it wrong anyway, right? Like, if they were trying to, like, talk through something that was like a very specific Black issue or very specific like person of color, like Asian, Middle East Asian, like Latinx issue, and they just tried to put like a white person in place, they would get it wrong, just like they
Yeah.
would get it wrong if they never did any consulting to any of those groups that they were about to portray. Like you would just get it wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, sorry, please finish your thought there.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I do think there are opportunities to write like strong Black characters for anybody. I don't think like writing is limited to thing, but the reality is that they have lots of folks have just messed up already, right? And at this point, just hire the folks, do your research, get folks in there. And a good example, typically for me, or just like even some like with like the children's show. I don't know if you've ever seen like Craig of the Creek and all of its
I
references to
love
Black
Craig of the
heritage, right?
Creek.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
show is developed or written by a white guy, right? But it has tons of other Black writers on the writing team and lots of engagement and an earnest attempt to like, let me just have this Black kid have like lots of great adventures and be real for like what Black American culture will look like, what the family structure is, and then what's happening there. Does it still have its little nods here to sort of like satisfy white viewers? Of course, but for the most part, Craig of the Creek is a wonderful like divergence from the need the trauma porn that is often consistent of like any Black storytelling. And often with a lot of writers there's a need in order to tell like to try to be like as serious and you know thoughtful to the Black experience. They often just diving too much into the trauma, and then it just soaks it entirely. But then you have something like Abbott Elementary or Craig of the Creek and all these other things, right, that display that, yeah, sometimes like the school in Philly is super duper broke, but like there's other things to do about it, right? Like there's always another way to work around it. So it's it's fascinating stuff nonetheless.
Agreed. I have find myself thoroughly enjoying The Bear because at first I wasn't gonna watch it because I'm like, ugh, I'm like, it's a cooking show. It's about a cooking like it's a cooking show, but it's like a drama comedy.
I haven't seen it.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and it's based in Chicago. And did you hear my accent come out? Chicago. Oops. Usually it's not there, but it just popped out. So
It's okay. You said that
um
you said the name. You summoned the Chicago.
it's a place in the capital of Illinois where this guy he owns a family restaurant now, and I watched it because I saw the black girl, Ayo, I think her name is, and I saw a picture of her doing this slow motion video that the guy always does at like these really fancy events. I don't know the name. I don't know like the production, and like I barely know her name.
Yeah.
But her dress was like really pretty and she did a really pretty pose. And I was like, that's right, she is in that show. And I was like, let me watch it.
Wow.
And so I watched it, and that's all it really takes some time. And so so many people are like really fumbling the bag by like just not having any black girls. And like, I think me and her are also like the same skin color. And like, I used to have a gap and then it just decided to close. And so, like, she has one. So I'm like,
It just
twin.
decided to close.
Yeah, it really did. Like, I really had one like 6 months ago. And then
Wow.
over the course, it was just like, bye. And I was like, why would you do that? Like, don't leave me, please. So I watched The Bear. And first of all, it's very like the editing is really good because you get frustrated, but then I think you learn what it's like to work in a restaurant, which I've never done. Right? Like I've never worked in any type of food industry, and I just know how people are. I've worked in like Best Buy and stuff like that, and I know how people
Yeah.
are about that. So I can't imagine them being like hungry or needing their coffee and just whatever. So it was very like jarring and it was so overwhelming. And I was like, I'm not going to watch the show if it stresses me out, because this is how so many people feel. And then she came in, and then also the guy from Odd Future, which I never remember his name. I think it's El Boy. So El Boy from like if you ever watch Lurder Squad on Cartoon on Adult
Yeah.
Swim, like at night, like he was like one of like the bigger guys, like the bigger, beefier guys.
Okay.
He's in it as well. And then there's this other guy named Abraham and this other guy named Marcus. So there's like a total of like four black people. And then like, branching out, they have a Latina woman, and then like branching out to like their families and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm watching it and I am just kind of watching it. I'm not analyzing it, right? Like I'm not like, oh, how are they going to write this black character? I am kind of analyzing the like, the Italians that they said are from Chicago. I am kind of like, oh, is this really Chicago? Like what did they study to like really be, because I feel like the Punisher is his brother. Like I'm pretty sure that's the Punisher. Like I'm pretty sure that's him. I never looked it up. Anyways, so I'm watching it and I'm just kind of like going back and forth, like, seeing what people see from like fine dining to like this restaurant in Chicago. And I'm watching how they write, or I'm realizing how they write this black girl or this black lady and this black guy who both work in the kitchen. And I don't have any qualms with it. It's not like, oh,
Mhm.
it's cringe. It's not like, my brother got shot, or like I'm in danger. And that's why like I work here. This was like my after school program and now I am a chef. Like,
Oh no, not the VOD industry. Sorry.
so, I really enjoyed it because I think sometimes, especially just living the Black experience, some of the best media is not reminding me that I'm Black, right? Like, you don't
Absolutely.
have to bring it up. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here. I've always been Black. I'm always gonna be Black. Like, so I really enjoyed it because when I realized like that's what was happening, I was like, huh. And then I just kept watching the show, and at no point do I feel like they've done that. And so obviously, if you're gonna watch it, I'm not gonna like ruin it for you. But yeah, I felt like they just had someone write those characters. And I have an example because I used to really, really be on Donald Glover and Childish Gambino.
That's-
And I remember when he talked about writing for 30 Rock, how they wanted him to write for Tracy Morgan, but he wanted to write for, I can't remember his name, but they were both from Georgia. It was the white guy with like he was also Fix It Felix of Wreck It Ralph. I just don't know his name.
Okay.
But so he was on the show and he was like, no, I feel more comfortable writing for him, the white guy, than I do Tracy Morgan. And I guess they hired him to write for a black guy. But I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
if we're being serious, if we're being real, like if we're being real, I feel like the Tracy Morgan on 30 Rock doesn't really have anything to do with being from like a certain background.
Yeah.
And so that could have been something like what the few episodes I watched of 30 Rock, I never really got that. I just felt like he was Tracy Morgan, right? Who
Yeah.
just be saying random stuff and needs to catch up, right? Like that's how I feel about Tracy Morgan. He's very funny, very talented. And so when he said that he wanted to write for the other guy, I was like, huh. I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense because you both are from Georgia, and then you could do like those nuances and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never got that feeling with 30 Rock, and
Do you feel then a white person could have written for Tracy Morgan's just fine in any of these cases? Like, do you feel like you needed, would it have been elevated had more black folks been writing for him?
I don't know because I think because Tracy Morgan is so established and we know his personality and
Hmm.
he's already come out like as he is, I think a good writer could assimilate Tracy Morgan, right? Because it was pretty much about Saturday Night Live being Saturday Night Live, right? It was like the behind the scenes of like Saturday Night Live. And so I don't think so. But I guess also we'll never know, right? We'll never know, and I won't be able to experience that. But and I also don't think I know when comedians do certain things. I feel like I'm talking so much, even though it's like my
Yeah,
podcast. I
you're
usually
good.
like talk like but you were talking like for a good while too, so I definitely want to give you
Exactly.
my input and not just like pull from you. So I know that comedians have the same saying like, are you black famous or are you like white famous, right?
Yeah.
And I just never felt like Tracy Morgan's and I've never watched his personal stand up, so just the things that I know of like Saturday Night Live and all of his movies, I never felt like he was black coded, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like someone like I don't even want to say Martin Lawrence. I'm trying to go back to Comic View. If y'all remember Comic View, but like to Bruce and stuff like that, like where they were definitely talking about like the black experience and it being like hilarious and like Mike Epps when he was like younger. I've never felt that way about Tracy Morgan. I just thought he was funny. I'm
Yeah.
like anybody could laugh at it. It's Tracy Morgan, but like if you don't understand the black culture, like a Comic View is not going to be that funny for you. Like which was
Yeah.
all of the black comedians would come out and they would do like stand-ups a little bit after another.
Yeah.
And there was also what was it, Comedy Def Jam too, where Martin Lawrence used to host it. That was like way before Comic View, I think.
I don't
Um,
even remember. I'm
I
sorry.
don't remember. Oh my goodness, but yeah. So I am not sure about that. I think yeah. Like, do you know Michael Shea from Saturday Night Live? He does the news update report. He's also a comedian.
I probably do if I see his face. Forgive me.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with actors.
No,
It's
you're
just
fine. No, like same. These are his name just came to me because a part of Michael Shea's like persona is him being like I'm black, but like that's not the only thing that I am. And so his comedy is kind of interesting to watch because sometimes he says some stuff that's just like off the wall where people would be like, all skin folk ain't kin folk. Like I feel like he says things that would make people feel that way. So
yeah.
it's just very interesting to watch it.
No, I think all of that makes sense, and to relate it to all of the stuff that we've been talking about, yeah, it there's definitely like that sort of like black famous, white famous like argument in that sense. It's like sometimes the media just doesn't speak to a larger white culture, and there's lots of stuff to engage with that in terms of like marketability and all this other stuff. I'm definitely not going to make a go woke, go broke sort of like argument, but But often sometimes these black stories get changed or limited or tossed in or just like just switched out or just altered in some way to make it more legible, and that's when it starts to lose its soul or get one or whatever in those cases. Like the movie Soul, from my understanding, it didn't have a black character in mind in early development, right? Like that was something that was slotted in, and some of that, even though lots of people love that movie and it's fun, it's great, my kids loved it, all this other stuff, it's there's still issues, right? There are still things that like you can tell, like they pulled some punches when engaging with blackness, and that is something that's happening all throughout media, because you can talk about like what media has been made for historically, who's it been made for, even in terms of like who like cameras were developed to see in the first place, right? All of it stems and influences what media is going to be today, and we're getting a lot better. We're making strides, especially as access to said technologies become a lot more equitable and everybody is engaging with it. But yeah, you're gonna get moments where you just hire Donald Glover to write for the black character, and then that like there might be some cool punchlines, but it often feels empty in some cases.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about 3 topics, and it just took us like, we just went deeper and deeper and deeper into those topics, which I love. I'm into it. I just feel like there's so much more we coulda hit on, so there's definitely gonna have to be a part 2, because now we come to the portion of the episode with our hot take section,
Ooh, hot
right?
takes.
These are for the youngins because I be scrolling past stuff so quick. I be like, "What are they talking about?" Sometimes I don't even have the energy to like look up the origins of a meme. Like if it just comes across, it comes across. I
You
have
don't know yet
so
skibbity
many.
toilet history?
I do now, literally as of like 2 days ago,
Oh wow, that nice.
because someone made a video and I saw it in passing. I didn't like search either. Um, so yeah, I have so many memes, right? Like we were like the OG memers. Like it was a Dave Chappelle show, right? So first it was like probably it was in living color, right? Like it was in living color, SNL, Mad TV, Dave Chappelle, Key and Peele, and then like there were these memes getting created in between, like physically on paper. I would
Yeah.
love to do a documentary about like meme history because I think it's so cool.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've never thought about like, because typically when I think about like meme history, I think about the digitized version of it. But meme history coming out of a sort of skit entertainment history is a fascinating connection. I would be so interested in like going down that rabbit hole. But please go with your hot take.
Yeah, you ain't got to tell me twice because I love reading documentary. Like it'd be so trill, and the kids don't even say trill no more. But like
That's all right. It'll come back around. It always does.
it will because it's so good. Like trill is so like there are some things that are just really really good. So I actually have 2 things to talk about. So one is the amount of layoffs with Bungie. I saw a lot of people who are annoyed by it because they're like, "Bungie, you have so much money. Like, what
Mhm.
are you doing?" So, do you think that part of it is to save money, or is to save money to preserve games? Or is it to be like, well, everybody else is doing it. Here's how we can cut costs with the Bungie layoffs?
Um, I think it's a few things, right? And I'm not an economist by any means, but the reality is that every time one of these tech companies lay a bunch of people off, their stocks rise, right? Like they gain artificial value
I
in
didn't know
terms of
that.
just like, yeah. So they gain artificial value in terms of how they're viewed, how they make money, and all these other things, right? There is the basic conception of just like less people to pay, more money in the pocket, and on a sort of like financial quarterly system where as long as we're like there's a constant need within any sort of corporation to have just like never ending growth, right? It is the pure basis of like capitalistic growth, where it's like you have to grow, and any sign of shrinking, even being like just the same, is a negative, right? So these are some of the ways that companies maneuver themselves to look as if they are growing, to look as if they have gained what they need to in that sort of like quarterly expression. And unfortunately, capitalistic movement does not care about the livelihoods of individuals or of the creation of art, right? It is what it is. Don't get me wrong. Some of these companies have made amazing pieces of art and games with talented people that are working at it. Bungie, just between Halo and Destiny alone, has like wowed and forever changed the lives of so many other people. But at the end of the day, a company is money. And in order to make that money, in order to have that sort of rise, they're going to do it. They're going to drop people off. And as I look more into it, I'd be very curious to see like what is the direct reason that they're giving, but it's not just Bungie, it's Niantic, it's Blizzard, it's Riot, it's all of these countries, all of these companies that are consistently laying people off, and it is a scary time to be working in the gaming industry, right? It is weird experience to say that like academia feels more stable in terms of like the working market than the gaming industry does. And that is insane because if anybody's familiar with like what the academic market is, there are a lot of people with PhDs that are like eating Campbell's soup on a couch, right? It is what it is. There are more PhDs than there are like positions available to individuals, and both are incredibly precarious, but like I've thought about making that switch from academia to industry, and I legitimately thinking about like the well-being of my daughters and my wife and my family. They got to eat, and I'm not sure the gaming industry can I couldn't afford them just being like, you know, pack up your stuff, it's time to go, bro. But yeah, please.
You know what I think as you say all of that? Because me and my friend have been continuously having this conversation around entrepreneurship
Yeah.
because I started a business consulting company to help small and medium businesses to
Nice.
grow more because as these layoffs are happening, as nothing is certain, I think it's a good idea to have a sense of entrepreneurship. And it's frustrating to hear about these layoffs and these companies because they could have hired these people as a contract, even though people who are contractors get frustrated because they're like, I can't take a day off, I can't afford to get sick because I
Mhm.
don't get sick days because I'm an employee, I have to do this, I have to do that. And on top of having a contract, there's that non-compete thing, which
Mhm.
also makes it hard to like secure multiple places at a time, right?
Mhm.
Like and like that makes sense. Like you don't want to be at like Bungie and like Naughty Dog, right? Like doing yeah, I get it's not fair. But I would really have preferred for everyone to just be more of a contractor, right? So like you have to tell me 60 to 90 days before you're laying me off and then you still pay me. Like I know these people are getting severance packages, but there are
Mhm.
a lot of people who are getting laid off at smaller indie companies where they're like, "Yeah, sorry, like we just got to go and it's this week." Um and then having this more I that probably defeats the purpose of like
Yeah.
capitalism though, to like have more people able to work how they need to work versus
Oh,
being like, I'm hoarding all of your time, all of these
yeah.
years, all of these resources. I'm canceling your position and that game that you worked on that's probably can't go in your portfolio because there's this
Yeah, it's a huge NDA.
NDA and stuff like that. So I definitely would like to push. I know it's not for everybody, but even just to secure like your lifestyle and the lifestyle that you want to live, when these companies are like, I had to turn down a job because I was like, I'm contract only. And they're like, we're
Wow.
looking for a full time. And I'm like, you can get all of the hours that you want out of me that you're paying for. That's like reasonable. But like, I'm not about to just work for you.
Got it.
Like,
That is a hot take. Okay. No, I think your reasoning is solid simply because like there are like if you're already mobile and you can take a lot of stuff, then that's perfectly fine. But like there that feels like it harkens to like gig economy where it's like you're just taking job after job after job, and that puts you in a place where benefits are limited. You don't have stability in some cases because sometimes work comes and then doesn't come in some cases. I guess on a small pushback, I think just give them the benefits that contracting has to the people who are already employed. If you just make the jobs better, then I don't think there would be a fear to take them in some of these cases. But yeah.
I agree with that. And I also would say I should be able to charge you whatever my health insurance is
Yeah,
for as many months as, we are going to be together.
agreed.
Like I should get to bill you and be like, I should get to bill you and be like, my insurance is $6,000, for the next 6 months. And so this portion of it, it doesn't get taxed. It doesn't get, any of those things. Like it's just a part of my fee, but maybe they have to work that in another way, because if I sign a contract with you and I'm like, hey, like, by the way, you're paying for my insurance, you're paying for, like, this and that, and then me being like a person who can't get pregnant, I'm like, yeah, I'm also, doing this, but like this is a job that I could probably do on maternity leave before like I actually have to deliver. You're going to be like, why would I pay for all that when I get an employee? And it's like, nope, it's actually more expensive if you do that. Or like, if the gig workers make it as expensive to be an employee, I think you have a better chance, right? Of like getting the job, because I know they want to take gigs because they're cheaper, but realistically, gig workers are only going to be for people who are like healthy, able bodied
Yeah,
20 to like 25-year-olds. I think if everything is the same price, socialism,
yeah.
once again, defeating the purpose of capitalism, then we could very well be like, well, what's the difference between hiring an employee and hiring a gig worker? You have less commitment with the gig worker, but everyone's also of this mindset of like, if you're a gig worker, you're not going to work as hard. It's like, how about I want to be here? Like I applied to be here because that like I could be anywhere else in the world, but
Yeah.
like we're here. And so that mindset would also have to change as well. So a lot of changing of minds and a lot of changing of how like business works would be it
I
would
mean,
make it work.
yeah, that is an insane task, which is because there's all these there's all these arbitrary rules when it really just comes down to like pay people what they're worth
Yeah.
and give them the things that they need and benefit, right? And
Yeah.
since we want to get on well, I'm not going to go too far into socialism, but like, yeah, healthcare for all, basic medical stuff covered, throw education in there, right? Like, they're like I don't need my company to like, I don't need my workplace to be providing every step of the way, as long as they're giving me every benefit that is necessary. If I can have, or everybody else has, basic access to stuff, you'll have healthier workers, you'll have more productive workers. The irony of like wanting to work people 80 hours a week is that people are more productive in 30. It is what it is, right? Like, you avoid burnout, you avoid all these other things, right? And you're right, it's just a mindset to have to like, how the what we view as productivity and work need to be transformed. And the pandemic was the first time that, well, not the first time, but was a moment in which that we really were considering like, what is work, and like, what does it really need to be, from all the folks that were like quitting their jobs and finding passion projects and working at home and doing all these other things. But now that has seemed to have come and went, folks are really reeling it back into the status quo, as everybody gets called back to the office and all these other things, which is unfortunate. I was hoping that a global pandemic would have a little bit more of a radical impression on corporate life in America, but foolish me, silly me.
Yeah, I think, anytime we're on the verge of like change or like a big movement that could lead to change for at least the next generation,
Yeah,
we get complacent. There was like, here's 2 stacks for being in a panini. Thanks. Like that was it. And people was like, I guess it's not so bad. And it's like, it could have been better though. And I'm
yeah,
not saying like they could have gave us 5 stacks, like they're $5,000. I'm saying it could have been better afterward, because now you wouldn't be like, well, now I'm looking for a job in a recession because
mhm,
they want me to come back to the office. Like you wouldn't be doing that. So it's
yeah,
but
and that
I always get radical when I talk about it, and like, maybe I'm not doing everything I can do either, right? So like maybe that's why it hasn't happened. Maybe Janae hasn't done her part, right? And that's why everything is still how it is. I don't
issues are
know.
systemic, not individual. So yeah,
That's true.
yeah. Don't
That's
get me
very
wrong.
true.
Everybody has a piece to play, but right, like, just the failure of bureaucracy in and of itself, right? To get one person to move, it takes the person in front of them to get to step out the way, and all these other things. So these are systemic problems. If there's not change at the top, then we can recycle and do all the things that we
Yeah.
want. We're still heading towards, ecological disaster and, a weird Octavia Butler hyper, racist apocalypse. But it's interesting nonetheless.
My last hot take, because I guess that was three, because you said I had one. So
No, you're good. You're good.
my last hot take about the Blizzard welcoming unionization. How does that like look? How does that work? Like,
Ooh,
yes, that's a good, right? We've always told that unions are good, but people secretly try to uh, make them not happen because it's not, beneficial for the company's pockets, even though I don't know the numbers on how much it's not beneficial, but I don't feel like it's like a lot, right? I feel like if company A is making $500 and then, their workers decide to unionize, I feel like they act like they make $200. And I don't think
yeah,
that's the case.
yeah.
So, yeah, that was my little math example
It's okay. We're mathing.
for math.
Mathematical adventure time. Sorry, I watch
Oh
a lot
my
of
gosh,
animation.
no, I was just about to say mathematical. Ah, yes. I love Adventure Time.
But it's great. But yeah, so unions are such a weird thing to discuss, right? Because if you look at unions for what they are, in the quote unquote status quo that we have, unions are typically a net good. They are something that should be supported, unionize wherever you can. It is what it is. Unfortunately, unions do not solve the systemic issues that need unions for the first place. And for this, it can be difficult to speak to organizing folks because it's sort of like a step that needs to be taken, right? Like everybody understands that unions isn't going to fix the fact that capitalism is all driving us to extinction, whatever. Um, but they're the only form of fighting back that we have. And I feel like I'm going to be taken out of context for saying capitalism driving us to extinction. It was hyperbole, everyone.
I will
Maybe not.
specifically take you out of context so no one else will do it for you.
Yeah, I mean, come back in like 500 years. We'll see how the human race is doing. But but that being said, right? It under the conditions that we currently live, unions are one of the few tools that we have, and that can be seen by, as you pointed out, how heavily companies work to break them up or to union bust, right? And Blizzard was not, unique in this effort in this case. I had the opportunity to speak to a few of the organizing folks, like back when it was just like rumbling when I was doing my dissertation research, and it was very hush hush. Nobody could like we had to like meet personally or use like off. They couldn't use their own computer screens, anything else like that. Like anything that might have like given like tipped off Blizzard, because that's just smart organizing. Don't tell the people that you're organizing because they'll mess stuff up. Um, but it was really a concerted effort by a lot of folks who for a long time wanted to see some level of equity be given to game developers and workers, right? Like as we pointed out, it's such a precarious field, it's such a precarious job. You need some level of protections, and many people weren't. Many people were just left off, and Blizzard, of course, being a horrific example of in the ways in which people were not protected through all of its multiple court cases against the state of California and all these other things. And while those cases were going on, people were like whispering and getting their best together to put a union together. So 4 years later, it is pretty dope to see that they got it together, and they put it together as this will be the first step into providing them the equity that they deserve and what they need to engage with. So yeah, that support your unions, do what you got to do, and I hope more companies follow suit and helping rather than busting their unions. And I have very little hope for that, but there's always a time where a company will surprise me. Sometimes you'll just pull a Ben and Jerry's, and I'm just like, oh shit, cool. You're doing something that's like morally good without public interference or intervention, that is thing, and it is technically our responsibilities to hold companies accountable. So it is what it is. Companies are going to company. It's up to the people to make sure that they company the way that we want them to. So either way.
Yeah, that was really good. I Every time I see Ben and Jerry's and I see the price, I'm like, it's for a good cause. So
For
you really,
it's the flavors
you
for me.
know,
Like
like
just give me some regular ass ice cream. Like I don't need
that's true
Tootie
too. I
Pops,
don't want
red velvet. Like
Garcia
it's
cherry.
you're doing too much, Ben and Jerry. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but
it is for a good cause.
it's for a good cause, and I think we should look at things that way. I Okay, before I turn this into another hot take, there was a conversation about making games like
Mhm.
$75. Well, I think they're $75 right now, right? They're like 65,
I mean, with
75.
tax, might
So
as well be.
yeah, like so making games over $75 because they were like some of that money would go directly to the developer. And it's like, well, why don't you just pay the developer instead of like, where's the $75 going to in the first
Yeah.
place? Like these games are taking you probably $12 to make,
Well,
right?
they
Because
they cost
you're
way more to make. I'm sorry, but you're right in the sense of just pay them more. They do have they have it right. It is what it is.
yeah. So I'm okay with paying more, right? Which is also socialism. I know I keep saying that, but like it just keeps coming up every time. I'm like, well, why can't we all have it? And it's like, oh, you're talking about socialism. It's like, oh, that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard for me to like,
Rationalize. Yeah.
yeah, because whew. Anywho, before I backtrack, paying more for something to help more people is essentially socialism. And I do feel like, though, if we were to explain things without using the trigger words of like socialism, I think a lot more people would be onto it, right? Because they've been taught to like hate these words, right? They've been taught that they're woke. They've been taught that, woke means something.
It's I always look like I'm sleepy,
Means
so like
like,
if anytime somebody says woke, I have to make sure that my eyes somehow widen enough.
yeah, be like, I'm wide awake, like that
Woke.
Katy Perry song. Um, we won't even talk about woke, but woke doesn't mean what they're telling y'all it means. It was for Black people to realize that the government was really putting drugs into the Black communities and then busting the Black drug dealers. So they wasted all of this
Where'd the
money
black dads
to
go?
give to the Black.
Why they blaming the family structure? That's the whole thing. So you're right.
Yeah, so that's what being woke is, right? They wasted all this money putting the drugs into the Black community just to waste more money to monitor the Black drug dealers who were at that time doing way more for the community, which the feds could have took that money, the CIA could have took that money to also help the community.
Okay.
But so it's not the derogatory term. It's not the new N word. Stop using it like that. Like DEI is also not the new N word either. That means hiring somebody who's a paraplegic. Like, they have the separate Olympics for a reason, right? Actually, they could probably combine. Anyways, I'm just thinking out loud now. So I'm
Okay.
just saying, let's Google words individually. Like, let's get the actual dictionary definition and not like the first thing that comes up on Google, because Google will give you what answer you want depending on the area you're in.
That echo chamber will echo.
Hmm. Echo, 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 echo. Okay. I'm going to end this episode because there's always more to talk about. Like, let me know if y'all want me to do a 3-hour podcast. And then I will let everybody I know who comes on that we're going to sit here and we're going to talk for 3 hours. And hopefully by 2.5, we'll run out of things to say and we'll just start saying stuff from Adventure Time. But I just don't think
Don't.
that's the
Yeah, it's not
case.
gonna
I don't,
happen.
I don't, I don't think that's the case. Like, man. Anyways, Akil, thank you for being here. I know I'm getting loud
That's
now,
okay.
but thank
Thank you so
you
much for having
for
me.
being here. Yeah, this has been great because usually at the beginning of the podcast, I tell the people like, oh, I've met this person like once, but like, we have been in like the same Twitter space back when Twitter was cool and it wasn't X. And then we met at GDC, and then we had that brief conversation at like a GDC like after event.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like at the actual place, because you just meet a lot of people outside of
The
the
best stuff
place. And so
happens
we really
outside of
only
GDC. Sorry, I'm sorry. So,
Yeah, no, it's true though. It's true. Like a lot of the current relationships I have now is because of outside of GDC. So, just thanks for talking to me. And like, I felt like I knew like a little bit about you. So this has really been a pleasure to like know more and hear what you guys say. And I feel like that's why I was quiet, because I'm like, tell us more, and then let me ask more questions.
I'm happy to rock either way. If I rewatch this, I'll see if I talk too much, and then I'll cringe. But that's okay. I hope whatever I said was helpful, and like I said, happy to do this, happy to be here. And if you ever need to chat again, happy to do it. I literally can sit here for 3 hours and talk about like all the
Yeah.
Adventure Time, plot
Oh yeah.
points, the memes, the theories. Like,
No, because it's deep. Like it's deep. Like his mom, like the island, like
you
Suzanne,
got
like
gold going on, like what like
like
the
oh my
tears of the deities,
gosh.
like what do we the
Oh my
cosmic owl, like come on,
gosh.
like all right,
Betty,
bet
the new like Fiona, like oh please, there's so much. There's so much. There's so much. But yeah, thanks for being here, you guys. So, where can the people find you? Like, what should they look out for? Where can they find you?
my
Are you working on anything
my
cool?
God, I'm still on that X page, whatever, Akil Fletcher, because the Black is Black Mage was taken, and I'm too lazy to think of another name right now.
Oh, okay.
That being said, I guess I'm also on Instagram and anything else you can find me. Got my website at akilfletcher.com. Check stuff out there if there's anything you want to read. I have some writing on Google Scholar as well. And, in the back of my mind, I'm still working on my book project, which hopefully by 2026, they will have that. So be on the lookout for, what is tentatively titled Playing in Color, and, a wonderful exploration of how Black gamers build worlds. So, yeah.
Dope. So, this has been Akil. Akil is amazing. Definitely go check out his work. As usual, I am Janae. This is the end of Gaming for the Culture. If you would like to support the podcast, you can do so through Patreon. And the Patreon subscribers, they get it first, as well as they get to ask questions in real time to all of our guests. If you would like to follow me, I'm Janae Benet everywhere, anywhere. Only follow me online, not in real life. That would make me scared. Or not really. You'd probably be scared. So, that's just that's just a little bit of advice, right?
Don't run up on her.
Y'all continue to game safely, because you never know what that thing is that I keep
Hey,
throwing
on
me.
it.
Okay, you just never know. You just never know. It could be a Bible. It could be a blicky. It could be both. It could be two in one. You just never know.
Sell to
No,
the
okay.
pearly
So
gates.
I'm just. You want to see him today? Like I can introduce you. What's up? Let's not promote violence. We promote anti-stalking, not violence. This has been another amazing episode. You guys, if there's anybody that you want me to talk to, I would love for you to reach out and tell me who it is, or tell them to get in contact with me. Either way, thank you so much for watching this episode. And I think we're like halfway through our season 2 at this point. So, like, we're almost done. This is amazing. And I couldn't be here without all of y'all. And obviously, GSN, Gifted Sounds and Network, they are the sponsors for this podcast. So until next time, game safely, be kind, think about socialism. Just have a trickle of a thought of it the next time you go to the grocery store and eggs are like $5. Just think about it. That's
Outrageous.
all. It's too much. Bye.